Get out. The house is mine. I don't want to see your face anymore." After having her way, my wife, Cindy, stunned me with a sudden demand for divorce. All right. Then, there's nothing more to say. Without arguing, I packed my minimal belongings and picked up the divorce papers from the desk. I filled in my name and the necessary details, had it signed right there, and headed to the county clerk's office to file my divorce. I didn't return home that day. The next day, police officers with an arrest warrant showed up at Cindy's house. Cindy's panic scream echoed through the neighborhood, causing a bit of a stir among the residents. Based on the reports I had made the night before, she was issued an arrest warrant for a certain crime. Being detained might have felt like the end of the world to her, but this was just the beginning of a tragedy. My name is Michael, 65 years old. I work for a major pharmaceutical company. 5 years ago, at the age of 60, I was due to retire from my managerial position at the company I had been with since graduating. I had planned to leave the company and start a second life with my family. But I reconsidered after being earnestly asked to stay at the job to pass down the technological knowledge to the next generation and raise resources. I agreed to take on the role because I love the field of research and development. Consequently, my retirement moved to 5 years later, and I signed a 5-year contract with the company where I'm currently employed. Unlike the stressful days of having a managerial position, I now enjoy a comfortable work-life balance, working freely on the field and leaving on time. I had also been able to seriously pursue a side business that I had been dabbling in. Working full-time now, I have more free time than before, and I'm financially and mentally more relaxed. I'm able to spend ample time with my family, truly experiencing a balanced work life for the first time. In fact, I went through a divorce in my 30s because I neglected my family. My parents had a wonderful relationship, living modestly while respecting and supporting each other. For me, who had dreamt of building such a family, this experience was a harsh one. After a long period of being single, I became even more of a workaholic. Though I sometimes feel lonely, the comfort and freedom of my accustomed bachelor life are too well known to me. I thought I might be alone for the rest of my life. But a few years ago, I met a woman named Cindy, and we became partners. It felt like a dream come true to meet the ideal woman, especially since I had given up hope. That's why I'm determined to cherish my family and not repeat the same mistakes this time. Cindy is 16 years younger than me, but what attracted me to her was her solid and reliable way of living. We met through work as I was nearing the end of my 50s. She was a secretary of the collaborative research project which I was a part. As we frequently contacted each other in the line of duty, we gradually became closer and started going out for meals, just the two of us. The fact that we both had experienced divorce was one reason we hit it off so quickly. However, because of that, we both became cautious and didn't rush into getting married. With such experiences behind us, we spent a longer time as partners, but recently, there has been a change in our relationship. Cindy was the one who broached the subject of becoming a family. Being unmarried comes with many restrictions, doesn't it? I've come to want a relationship where I can proudly say we're family in case anything happens. While I don't like to dwell on emergencies, I've often heard that not being legally recognized as family can be inconvenient in situations where, for instance, one of us requires surgery but cannot sign a loan due to being unconscious, mentally incompetent, etc. I wholeheartedly agreed with her suggestion. Understood. I think Cindy's point is very valid. It's late, but will you marry me? It's rare for the reserved Cindy to strongly want something. I was so happy she had the courage to express her feelings. I proposed right away. If becoming a family could give Cindy peace of mind, I thought that was the best thing to do. And so, we get married and became an official family. No matter what, my life has been vividly colored since meeting her. I sincerely hope this happiness continues forever. Our married life began, and we started living together. I lived in a house I bought when I was younger. A small, 2-story, 4-bedroom house with a yard. It was convenient, close to the station, but I thought it was a bit too big for living alone in my old age. So, Cindy moved out of her apartment, and we decided she would move in with me. Our home is in a quiet residential area a bit away from where I work. This house is really lovely. The location is great, and I've really taken to it. It seems Cindy quickly took a liking to the town and the house where I live, which is also closer to her workplace. This place is a high-end residential area, huh? There are so many impressive homes lined up. Among them, the Smith's house is astonishingly luxurious. Owning a house here is incredible. It's nothing special. Our house is smaller compared to the others around here, and while I do like the environment, I was able to buy this property at a lower cost at the right time thanks to a friend who knows a lot about real estate investments. I said it and then regretted it, looking at Cindy's face. Really? It's good you didn't lose out. Michael, you have all sorts of friends, don't you? Seeing her expression darken, I remembered a conversation we had in the past. It's scary to think of leaving our fortune to chance and losing it all. I just can't come to like investments. It's better to save money steadily. From such comments, I knew she thought of investments almost like gambling. I've been investing for a long time, and now that I'm retired, I'm actively building assets through investments as a side job. However, I didn't want to make Cindy anxious, so I haven't yet told her. Seeing her expression made it even harder for me to talk about my side job. Weeks passed, and as I started getting used to our life together, Cindy had fully embraced our new environment. She's highly adaptable and sociable in anyone's eyes. Being in research for so long, my social skills are nowhere near hers. Unlike me, who hardly interacted with the neighbors, Cindy quickly became acquainted with the nearby residents. Thanks to her proactive socializing, even I became recognized as Cindy's husband by our neighbors and got approached for chats. Cindy made friends with the Smiths, who live in the biggest mansion around, and often talked about them. The Smiths retired early from a well-known company and made a fortune through investing. Impressive, right? One day, while we were around the dinner table, the topic of the Smiths' house came up again. I smiled and nodded as usual. Their house has an elevator, and they even have a maid. I heard from Mrs. Smith today that her husband is the same age as you, Michael. That's right. He's really made it. It's something to see people in our age group doing so well. I thought her excitement, like a girl peeking into another world, was endearing and responded with a smile. However, my response didn't seem to land as intended, and her previously joyful demeanor turned sour. What's that reaction? Michael, don't you ever feel like you don't want to lose or want to try harder? Was everything you said about making me the happiest woman just a lie? I was taken aback and put down my fork immediately. Looking at her seriously, I firmly denied it. It's not a lie. I do care about you, Cindy, and I always want to make you happy. Words are cheap. Really, Mrs. Smith is so lucky, isn't she? Cindy turned her face away and retorted with a hint of sarcasm. That argument makes it sound like being financially wealthy is a condition for happiness. It's hard to believe this is the same modest Cindy I knew before we were married. She seems like a completely different person. From that small disagreement, Cindy's attitude began to change gradually after we got married. She often compared me to the Smiths, expressing dissatisfaction with my lack of success. Even though I understand that other people are just that, others, and there's no need to live the same way, it seems I was unconsciously affected by her words. There was a time when I worked day and night, at the office and at home, so much that I forgot to eat or sleep, all to avoid losing Cindy's favor. The realization that I was pushing myself too hard, not just in my main job, but also in my side business, came when I caught a cold for the first time in years. While I was achieving steady results at work, I reflected that it was meaningless if I sacrificed my health. But as I felt physically and mentally exhausted, Cindy threw even colder words at me. Like, a cold. Don't give it to me. Really, to think you're weak physically too. Her frowned face and the lack of even a bit of care or concern made me feel like I was waking up. The even physically part probably meant not to mention your lack of success. No matter how much success I had at work, I couldn't bring myself to talk about my side business, growing stronger in the belief that she wouldn't be satisfied with just that. I had reached an income of $80,000 a month, but I felt as if she would scold me for being satisfied with just that. Time passed, and before I knew it, my 65th birthday and my retirement were fast approaching. Conversations with Cindy have become scarce, but she often mentioned what we should do after retirement. Hey, Michael. Once you retire from your job, let's go all out. Just the two of us. How about an overseas trip or something? Huh? Sounds great, right? If our relationship could return to being good again, I'd want to fulfill any wish she had. Yay, that sounds good. Did you have any place in mind? The Smiths went to Italy for their honeymoon. I thought something like that would be wonderful. After retirement, you could afford a little luxury, right? Her words still contained a hint of mockery towards me. Every time she seemed to look forward to my retirement, a worry crossed my mind. Was her sudden desire to get married, followed by a drastic change in attitude after the wedding, all just to target my retirement benefits? I tormented myself with such unpleasant thoughts. Then one morning, I noticed another change in Cindy. She usually took her time getting ready, making mornings before work busy. But that day, she was leisurely relaxing in the living room, which struck me as odd, so I asked her, "Isn't this usually the time you're all prepared? Everything okay?" "Oh, I don't need to go to work anymore. I quit my job." "What?" Cindy always said she loved her job before we got married. Since we were both workaholics, we often talked about how great it was to have a relationship where both partners were independent. Thinking something must have happened for her to quit her job, I asked her why. Quitting all of a sudden, did something bad happen? Not really. We're married now, and we can live on one income, right? I thought it seemed kind of tacky to keep working so hard. I was dumbfounded by her words, which seemed so unlike the Cindy I knew. She glared at me as I struggled to find words. "What's the matter? Got a problem with it? If you love me, you should be happy that we can spend more time together." "I'm sorry. I don't have any complaints. You should do what makes you happy, Cindy." At that moment, I thought if that made her happy, then it was okay. But after quitting her job, Cindy's lifestyle became disordered, and her spending grew reckless. She seemed to be greatly influenced by the frequent mentions of the Smiths, and it only escalated. Even the investments she once detested, she began with joy after being taught by Mrs. Smith. Soon, despite being a beginner, Cindy was elated to have made a significant profit and started to spend lavishly. Her attire for visits to the Smiths' house became flashier, dressing up even more. Various doubts plagued me, and every time I saw her, my anxiety grew. Then one day, on my way home, I was approached by a woman I didn't recognize. "Excuse me, you're Michael, right? Nice to meet you, I'm Lucy." Lucy introduced herself with a very courteous demeanor. She apparently works as a live-in helper at the Smiths' house. It was our first time meeting, but I had heard about Lucy from Cindy's stories. I remembered Cindy remarking, unusually praising her as a modest and beautiful woman of her age. "I actually need to talk to you about Cindy." It was dark, and I didn't notice at first, but looking closely, her complexion was pale. From her expression, it was clear she was deeply troubled. I nodded, ready to listen to what she had to say. Lucy's concern was about Cindy's visits to the Smiths' house. Initially, she visited to chat with Mrs. Smith, whom she had become friends with, but recently, she started coming over even when Mrs. Smith was not home. I'm very grateful to Mrs. Smith, and I really respect her. So, I couldn't face her if something happened during her absence, and I overlooked it. In short, Lucy is extremely concerned that Cindy and Mr. Smith might engage in an affair. Recently, she mentioned that the Smiths' relationship hasn't been great. Lucy awkwardly shared her fear that Cindy's presence might further strain their marriage. "I'm sorry. My wife seems to be losing interest in me, and now she is causing trouble with the Smiths. I don't know how to apologize enough. Please don't feel bad. I'm the one who should apologize for bringing up such a thing. It's just my doubt. If it turns out I'm wrong, blame me for whatever." As I expressed my appreciation to Lucy for speaking out about Cindy's untoward behavior, she continued apologetically. "Cindy is bright, beautiful, and wonderful. I can see why Mr. Smith is so pleased whenever she visits. But every time I see his mood improve, I can't help but feel sorry for Mrs. Smith and worry." I apologized and promised to do what I could to address the situation, exchanging contact information. I told her to feel free to talk to me anytime if she notices anything concerning about my wife's behavior. Lucy nodded in relief and went back to her work. After that, I decided to consult a professional to monitor Cindy's activities. And I also tried to directly persuade her to avoid causing trouble in someone else's family. It's my business who I visit. Don't you ever control me. Cindy got mad at me and completely shut down, resulting in no conversation between us. She spends most of her time out, neglecting any household duties. Feeling ignored and having less face-to-face time feels lonelier than engaging in arguments. Since our last conversation, Lucy and I have become friends who talk whenever we see each other. When I apologized for Cindy's persistent visit to the Smiths, Lucy sadly shook her head. Actually, she said, the Smiths are discussing divorce. It's only a matter of time now since they've already started talking about it seriously. Their relationship has been awkward for a while, and Cindy was just the trigger for what was inevitable. Lucy seemed genuinely distressed, as if it were her own concern. Soon after, I heard that Mrs. Smith moved out of the mansion. Cindy has been visiting Mr. Smith's house even more frequently since then. I spent my 65th birthday alone. No words or acknowledgement from Cindy. Apart from my colleagues, Lucy was the only one who celebrated my birthday by bringing flowers and homemade food. Happy birthday. I hope you'd like it. I wanted to apologize for the trouble caused by Cindy and thank you. The homemade meal and kind words touched my heart. While I appreciated Lucy's thoughtfulness, Cindy's coldness stood out even more. A few days later, when Cindy and I finally spoke at home, she looked serious. Let's get her divorce. It was as if she had been waiting for this day, with her words sounding almost scripted. On the desk, there was something placed. A divorce paper, neatly filled out in the wife's section, had been prepared at some unknown time. Having an unemployed Michael at home all day is unbearable for me. We'll both be happier living apart. Are you planning to live with Mr. Smith after we get divorced? I knew better not to ask, yet my mouth spoke unintentionally. Huh? What are you talking about? It's as if you're accusing me of having an affair. Stop making baseless accusations. I plan to stay right here. Of course, I want to maintain a good relationship with Mr. Smith as neighbors. I couldn't immediately grasp the meaning of her words. Here. What do you mean? I thought you wanted to leave because you couldn't stand living together. The assets, including the retirement fund, should be split in half. That's only right as a wife, isn't it? Why do you assume that I would be the one leaving? You're the one who should leave the house. I was most surprised at myself for not being shocked. Somewhere deep down, I think I had suspected it. Upon reaching retirement at 65, my wife brought up divorce, eyeing my retirement fund. Suddenly, my suspicion turned into the fact. She planned to take the house and all my retirement money. And that's why she suddenly pushed to get married. She believed she could proceed with the divorce on favorable terms for herself, remaining defiant. Get out. The house is mine. I don't want to see your face anymore. All right. Then, there's nothing more to say. Without arguing, I packed overnight clothes and other essentials, and picked up the divorce paper from the desk. I filled in my name and the necessary details, had it signed right there, and headed to the county clerk's office to file my divorce. I didn't return home that day. The next day marked the beginning of new developments. Police officers with arrest warrants arrived at our house in Mr. Smith's. I heard from Lucy about Cindy's panic scream echoed through the neighborhood, causing a bit of a stir among the residents. Unlike Cindy, Mr. Smith didn't resist the arrest and was detained smoothly, seemingly aware of the reasons. The charge against them was insider trading. The arrest warrants were issued based on the reports I had made the night before. Right away, I realized you had made up your mind. You've really been through a lot. No, I'm sorry for the trouble. It took me a while, but I finally decided. Based on information from Lucy and my own investigation through a professional, it was clear that Mr. Smith and Cindy were involved in insider trading. The investment talks, started as if they knew profits were guaranteed, were suspicious indeed. As expected, the investigation uncovered evidence of wrongdoing. Specifically, Mr. Smith had a friend who was an executive at a major corporation, and Mr. Smith engaged in stock trading based on information obtained from this insider. My investigation revealed that Mr. Smith was purposely using Cindy's account to cover up his illegal trading. They were in a complete complicity, combining their funds for trading under Cindy's name. I shared all the evidence I had gathered with Lucy. Initially, she had hoped to mend the relationship between the Smiths, so she strongly opposed to making accusations that could not only worsen their marital relationship but potentially destroy their household. However, with the divorce talks between the Smiths progressing and Mrs. Smith leaving the house, Lucy made up her mind. She told me that it's up to me how to use the gathered information. Initially, I was hesitant to report the illegal trading that would lead to criminal charges against Cindy, so I have been struggled with how to handle such information. However, yesterday's incident completely extinguished any feelings I had for her. The divorce finalized, allowing me to let go of any lingering emotions and hesitations. After filing the divorce papers last night, I immediately took action through the lawyer I had been working with. Yesterday, my divorce was finalized. Thanks to Lucy, I was able to realize Cindy's true intentions early and end our relationship smoothly. No, I feel terrible that my actions have led to the destruction of 2 households. Lucy, you're not at fault. Everyone involved has received the punishment they deserved. Please don't worry about it. Despite her own difficult situation, Lucy was concerned about my well-being. She plans to leave the now empty mansion and look for a new job. That night, I returned to my now solitary home. Thinking about the future in the quiet room, I remembered Lucy and worried about her. Feeling guilty for effectively taking away her job as a result of my investigation, which involved her employer, I spent the night pondering what I could do to help. Afterward, Cindy, given probation, apparently settled the matter with just a fine being levied against her. However, it seemed impossible that she could afford to pay the sum, which amounted to hundreds of thousands of dollars. Shortly after receiving this report from my lawyer, Cindy contacted me, predictably. Despite being fed up with the expected turn of events, I answered her call. "Where are you right now? I can't get into the house. What's going on? Let me in right now." Her yelling came through the phone. She acted as if there was nothing wrong for her to return to the house. I was utterly appalled by her audacity, but anticipating such developments, I had already changed the locks on the house. "We're divorced now. We're not supposed to live together, right? I figured you wouldn't return the keys if I asked. Of course I won't surrender the keys. You should be the one to leave. I quit my job because of you, you know. And now, with the money I'm being asked to pay, I'm in debt. What are you going to do about it?" Cindy's accusation was utterly unreasonable and selfish, blaming everything on me. "I don't know what you're talking about. I never said I wanted you to quit your job even once. You chose to quit your job. It's hard to find a job, but you'll need to look for it again." I sighed and then hung up the phone. However, her calls continued afterward. She frequently contacted me about the division of property after the divorce was finalized, as she was struggling with money. Indeed, it is possible to claim a share of assets after a divorce. So, it was clear she would resort to this approach. "I'll hire a lawyer and take the house and everything else. You've put me through this, so I might as well claim alimony." The word betrayed made my blood boil. That was supposed to be my line. "Do whatever you want, but it's you who'll suffer from this. You should calm down and look at your disadvantageous situation. Shut up. It's all your fault. I'll make sure you regret this. Really, this is my last piece of advice. You'll be the one to regret it." Despite our short marriage, Cindy was claiming all sorts of rights, perhaps out of ignorance. Regarding the house, Cindy has no right to claim ownership because I purchased it before we got married. We were at an impasse in our discussions, and so it was decided we would have a formal negotiation through lawyers. She wouldn't listen to me until the end. The negotiations about the division of property began through representatives, but the outcome was predictable from the start. That's because I had gathered more information about her activities beyond insider trading, including a major revelation of marriage fraud. She had been dating older men targeting their retirement funds and had multiple relationships from matchmaking parties, scamming small amounts of money from each. Though the methods varied, it became clear there were multiple victims who hadn't gone to court. Cindy had repeatedly used such schemes to pay off her debts. Learning this truth was a massive shock to me. I had doubts that she might have been after my retirement fund. However, accepting that the years of our relationship before marriage were all lies is incredibly painful. As one of the facts uncovered by the investigation, I shared this with Lucy. Unfooled by my businesslike, matter-of-fact reporting, she offered me words of comfort. I don't believe everything was a lie. When you spend a long time together, it's hard to fake everything. There must have been genuine moments in the times you shared laughter. Looking down as she searched for the right words, I thought Lucy was truly kind. Thank you. I wish that were true, but I can no longer bring myself to trust her. Now, I just think of myself as a fool who was deceived. That's not true. Even if you can no longer believe in Cindy, don't deny the part of yourself that did trust her. Lucy insisted fervently, supporting me more than I could myself. Watching her get desperately involved for someone else's sake, like she did for Mrs. Smith, felt purifying. It's sad to deny the happiness and joy you felt in the past. When I face a sad farewell, I make it a point not to deny the happiness in those memories. Her words lighten my heart. Having her presence allowed me to calmly accept the fact that I had been a victim of marriage fraud and wait for the right moment to act. After a divorce, if Cindy had just disappeared without involving me further, I could have kept silent about this fact. But the negotiations through lawyers began, and it was time to reveal all my cards. Based on the evidence I provided, she was once again subject to criminal penalties, facing up to 23 days of detention. Cindy quickly sought a settlement, and negotiation talks ensued. When I saw Cindy after several days, she looked so worn out, as if aged overnight, clearly affected by the detention and daily interrogations. Even she seemed to have been affected by the detention and daily interrogations. But showing weakness would only invite her to take advantage. I approached the negotiation with a firm stance. So, you planned to deceive me from the start, right? Approaching me, almost 60, was all for my retirement fund. The extra 5 years must have been unexpected for you. It's a misunderstanding. Let's talk. Regardless of the past, I never intended to deceive you, Michael. Believe me. For the first time, Cindy, who had never wavered in her assertive stance, seemed to realize her disadvantageous position and adopted a meeker attitude. A misunderstanding. I have evidence of your crimes, including one similar to how you treated me. How can you ask me to believe you? As I pushed back, she looked up at me with tearful eyes, pleading for forgiveness. I'm sorry. I apologize. I won't ask for anything else. Just please don't press charges against me. If you have any feelings for me, please. If I press charges against her, she would surely be found guilty. She was scared, knowing this. I apologize for hiding things and causing misunderstandings. But my relationship with you was serious, and I swear I was faithful. There was nothing between me and Mr. Smith. Really. So, are you saying there's nothing else you're hiding? Cindy nodded through her tears. I have something to tell you, too. There's one thing I've been hiding from you. What might that be? Tell me. Perhaps thinking the situation might improve, she leaned forward, showing a smile. Actually, I've been investing as a side job for a long time, and now I've successfully built my assets as my main occupation. I have a passive income of about $80,000 a month. What did you say? Her eyes widened, and Cindy looked at me as if she saw a ghost. I couldn't tell you until the end because you were always accusing me of not providing enough, but it's good I found out your true nature before I did. You could have been enjoying life by now. What a pity. You deceived me. That's terrible. If we had continued our marriage, I could have been happy. Her words were filled with regret, but there was no sign of remorse. It only highlighted her greed for money and her shallow sense of guilt. Realizing she had lost everything because of her greed, she hung her head in dismay. I won't settle. Reflect properly, and never involve yourself with me again. Her scream echoed the room. The discussion came to an end with the lawyers announcing the breakdown of settlement negotiations. Following that, I filed a case against Cindy, and victory was swiftly determined. Cindy faced felony charges. Instead of taking everything from me, she ended up losing it all. The relief I felt upon receiving the report was greater than the joy of revenge. It was a harrowing experience, but this series of events finally came to a close. With a criminal record, no steady job, and her numerous crimes revealed, leading to significant debt, Cindy would have nowhere to go even after paying her dues. I worried that in her desperation, she might involve herself in my life again. Given her audacity, it wouldn't be surprising if she appeared out of nowhere, pretending nothing happened, and tried to take something from me again. Through my lawyer, I officially prepared an affidavit to legally bind her, ensuring that she never involves herself with me or anyone close to me again. And so, I regain my peaceful daily life. With hobbies and work, my days are fulfilling. Returning to single life and regaining my own pace has allowed me to work without overexerting myself. I'm achieving more now than when I worked frantically to the point of breaking down, and soon, I'll be able to live comfortably on my passive income alone. While I'm content with my carefree lifestyle, there are many things I overlook in a single male household. I realize the work-from-home lifestyle needs to maintain a conducive environment at home. Therefore, I've started to consider entrusting someone trustworthy with the household chores. When I came to this realization, I immediately thought of the perfect person for the job. It's really great that Lucy agreed to work at my place. Being able to focus on my work and having her help every day has been a huge relief. Thank you. I'm really grateful to be employed, and I never imagined things would turn out this way when we first met. I proposed to Lucy that she work at my place until she found her next job. Since she gladly accepted, she's been working from this month. Her track record is solid, and she's utterly reliable. I felt at ease entrusting the household to her. Although she used to live in and work, my place is just a single man's home, not a mansion. So, she isn't necessarily staying at my place. She supports me in areas I overlook, making the house much more comfortable. Thanks to Lucy, I'm living a brighter and happier life.